The Errol Spence Jr. era appears to be over. Following his loss to Tim Tszyu, Spence announced his retirement from professional boxing, bringing an end to one of the most accomplished careers of the modern boxing era. Former unified welterweight champion, an undefeated champion for years, fighter many once considered among the best pound-for-pound boxers in the world, but after watching his final performance, it's hard not to feel a little sad. So the problem, because the biggest story of this fight isn't that Tim Tszyu won, it's that Errol Spence just didn't look like Errol Spence anymore. The sharp jab wasn't there, the reflexes weren't there, the movement looked stiff and the reactions looked delayed, and at times it felt like we were watching a fighter trying to do things his body simply would not allow him to do anymore. If you enjoy boxing breakdowns that go beyond the headlines, make sure to subscribe, because this isn't just about retirement, it's about what this fight revealed about both fighters. And by the end of this video, I'll explain why I think Spence made the right decision to retire and why Tim Tszyu's performance may have created as many questions as answered. The sad reality for Errol Spence Jr. For newer fans, it's easy to forget how good Errol Spence was. At his peak, he had relentless pressure, an elite jab, incredible body punching, excellent conditioning, and one of the toughest fighters in boxing during his prime. This was a man who unified multiple world titles and spent years at the top of the welterweight division, but boxing is a brutal sport, and unfortunately, careers don't always end the way that fans want them to. Ever since the horrific car accident, many fans have questioned whether Spence would ever truly be the same fighter, and to his credit, he came back and continued competing at the highest level, but over time, the signs became harder to ignore. Against Crawford, against Tszyu, the explosiveness looked diminished, the reflexes weren't what they once were, the movements felt a little bit more mechanical, more hesitant, almost herky-jerky at times, and in this fight specifically, there were moments where Spence looked like he was thinking about what he wanted to do rather than simply reacting. That's usually a dangerous sign for an aging fighter. Problem with this is that watching this fight, it felt clear that Spence's best days were behind him, not because he lacked heart, not because he lacked effort, but because boxing is unforgiving. A split second slower, a little less sharp, a little less explosive, and against elite competition, that's all it takes. And that's why I actually respected the fact that he announced his retirement right there in the ring, because I'd rather remember Errol Spence Jr. as one of the best welterweights of his generation than watch him continue to take damage trying to prove something he already has proved years ago. We don't want to see someone who's like a complete shell of himself. At least Errol Spence got to go out on his terms, he got to finish the fight, and that was pretty much the end for Errol Spence Jr. Now let's talk about Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu won, but did he impress? Because yes, he won the fight and he deserves credit for getting the victory and all the hard work he put in, but a win over a name like Errol Spence Jr. is still a significant moment on paper. Keywords, on paper. But if we're being honest, I didn't walk away from this fight blown away by Tim Tszyu's performance, and I don't think I'm alone, because given everything Spence has been through, given how diminished Spence looked, you would have expected Tim Tszyu to look spectacular, but instead he looked somewhat flat, his feet looked slow, the energy wasn't what you'd expect from a fighter trying to make a major statement. There were stretches where he looked content to simply outwork Spence rather than completely dominate him, and while that was enough to win, I'm not sure it was enough to answer the questions people still have about him in relation to his past performances. The concern isn't whether Tim Tszyu can beat fighters who are slowing down. We know he can, clearly, because he just beat Errol Spence Jr. The concern is what happens when he faces elite fighters in their prime. Is the result going to be the same as it was for Sebastian Fundora and other boxers that he's fought? Because Tim Tszyu looked average against a version of Spence that clearly wasn't the fighter we remembered, what happens against like a Bout, a Virgil Ortiz, a Fundora again? Those are the questions fans are asking, not whether Tszyu won, but whether he looked good enough to threaten the very best fighters in the division. And after this performance against Errol Spence Jr., I'm not sure we got a definitive answer about Tim Tszyu's direction. But at the end of the day, I think there are two truths here. First, Errol Spence Jr. made the right decision. He gave boxing some incredible moments and he became a unified champion. He fought the best and he leaves the sport with nothing left to prove. I genuinely wish him the best in retirement. Second, yes, Tim Tszyu got the win, but this wasn't the breakout statement performance many expected and that he needed. Instead of leaving the fight convinced he's ready to dominate the division, I left wanting to see him against another elite contender before making that judgment. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway of all. We learned that Errol Spence's journey is over, but Tim Tszyu still has a lot to prove if he wants to come back and be a force within the division. And I'm going to leave you guys with one more question. Did Tim Tszyu actually impress you, or were you expecting a lot more against that version of Errol Spence Jr.? It's been your boy Afro Boxing. Do not touch that dial because we're still talking boxing in his next video. Peace.